in America that were sharing one, but I have actually been able to find one within the UK for the similar sort of price point.
Right, yeah.
So that's...
Has anybody found one with something like less than screw terminals? I'm looking for something a little simpler just to experiment with.
No, this has all got screw terminals, but you might be able to change them over to other options. It's quite spaced out.
Oh, that's a nice. Where did you get that one?
This was a company called K2 Audio in the UK. It's got a can't remember the name of the plug. One of those plugs for power supply, 7.5 volt to 14 volt.
Barrel plug.
Barrel plug, yeah. There's capacitor on there, LEDs. There is an infrared sensor on there because this is actually designed for home automation with audio systems. But yeah, it just had all the pinouts on it. So I think it was about £22. And I think it was with me within 2 days. So yeah, the other one I was looking at on eBay, similar sort of price, but out of stock. So yeah.
Yeah, I got this one, which is obviously not got terminals, so it's just the standard sort of servo plugs on there, which is really nice actually. So you've got a barrel connector, there's a switch at the side, and then there's a voltage regulator, so you can put whatever voltage you want on it. And then you've got ground, power, and data connections all the way around. The challenge I've got, and this is, I guess, there's two sort of form factors with the ESPs depending on their thickness. So this one, the channel on this is a little narrow.
Yeah.
Which I think a few of the other guys have come across.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, the board that I've got, they've actually solved that problem. They've got two rows of headers on one side.
Okay.
So this will take the ESP32 dev kit, or the Node MCU32S, which I think is the narrow one, the narrow version.
Right, got you.
I think the difference between them is the narrow one doesn't have any like text on it, whereas the slightly wider one has actually got printed text just by the header pins.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, so the header pins all the header pins are marked on the wider one, Steve.
Yeah. So this is one of the narrow ones, and as you can maybe tell, there is no text on it.
Yeah.
And the wider ones, it's got each pin is labelled up. So I think that's the difference from a visual point of view, anyway.
Yeah.
Be right back.
Cool. And are the pin layouts the same for both? Do we know? Anybody? No. I was wondering whether. Sorry, go on.
I wouldn't know on that one, but I know that there is different versions of the SP32 with different number of pins, isn't there? Yeah, I think this is a 38 pin too.
Yeah, I've got the same, I think.
38 pin, but I think there is a 36 pin version as well.
Yeah, so these I mean, just the beauty of these things, if we can get them working fully, is that you've obviously got Bluetooth, you've got Wi-Fi, you've got all of the controller pins on a single controller. So effectively, for things like the little micro droids, they're absolutely superb. And you've got that running, haven't you, Thomas, on the micro? I think we showed it last time on the ones that we put together. They work really well actually on those. Yeah,
I've got it running happily off USB. But as soon as I go over to battery power, then I lose connectivity on to my mobile via the Bluetooth. It just keeps resetting. But having a brief look at it, other people are saying it's the brownout voltage sensor, and then it resets the board each time when it drops below a certain voltage, which is why it then disconnects.
Yeah, no.
Regarding the Bluetooth that's on board, is that BLE or is that classic Bluetooth? Do you know?
It's both. So you can choose either on the through the configuration, but I've had it connected to an iPhone over Light, LE, and normal.
Great.
Um,
And is there like a link to that board somewhere, or like where you guys recommend picking it up or anything like that?
yeah, I mean it's the ESP32 dev board. So if you just search
board,
for the ESP32 dev board,
Sure.
they kind of look like that. We're just saying, Amit, that there's two form factors. So there's one that's got slightly narrower pins, which Steve has got.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but they're effectively the same board. The challenge that Thomas has got, and I've had as well, is that when you run them through the USB power, they work beautifully. As soon as you run them directly on battery power, they keep resetting, so they keep losing connection. Now, I think it is what I thought it was brown out. So it was, as the servos were moving and it was dragging a bit of voltage. What was happening is it was basically resetting the board. What I'm not sure is using a single battery power source is how you can get around that brownout. I probably can do with a capacitor just to give it a little bit of charge if it flicks over. I don't know. Have you seen anything on it, Steve? I don't know if have you had a chance to play with them when you're off mute?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, honestly, no, I haven't played with it at all yet. But I'm just curious. Does it do it with sketches that don't have servos and things attached? So even if you just did blink or something like that, run it off a battery, does it still brown out?
Got to say, I haven't tried that.
But at least then that would narrow it down to say if it is something that's drawing power that's causing it.
Because I mean, servos are notorious for drawing more power than you expect.
So I mean, it might be an opportunity to test something like you do with high-end audio. They put inline power capacitors for bass subsystems for when the power, when the bass hits a little too hard to keep it from pulling down the entire circuit. So I mean, it might be something where an inline capacitor to help maintain might help.
Yeah, I've not tried it on the breakout board. I've just tried it direct. I mean, just looking at the breakout board, there's two surface-mounted capacitors on there next to the voltage regulator, which I'm assuming is just to deal with that any extra draw. But on this breakout board, what you've got is you've kind of got 3.3 volts as the main power bands across here, and then you've got one 5-volt pin. Obviously, for running servos, you probably want the 5 volts on the actual pin. But actually, when you do get them running, they're a dream really to work with. When they're powered by USB, they work really well.
Yeah, well, I mean, the breakout board that I've got, they got a capacitor on the power in as well.
I think Oliver's just said on the chat that you can run the ESP from a UBEC, as this contains filtering capacitors, and also check the battery can deliver enough current. So running them through a UBEC as a power supply might improve things a little better.
Because I mean, I have the exact same problem with the BLE board and the Nano. Once you start getting driving motors and the servos running, and very easily the Bluetooth gets knocked out. So
the great things with these boards is that if you're familiar with the Arduinos, it's pretty easy to flick over really to same kind of programming language and same interface. So I didn't find any problem kind of shifting across really.
Yeah, it was very easy to set up.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are dual core.
They are dual core, yeah.
And does it have the same IDE? Do you use literally the same IDE, or
Yeah,
is it
you
a
can
different
use the
IDE?
Arduino IDE.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
Does
just
anyone
a
use
plugin you have to download.
anybody use Visual Studio IDE for Arduino or anything else like this, or do you guys all just use the Arduino IDE?
I did try. There's a plugin for Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
For
Oh,
doing
okay.
development.
Yeah.
And I played with it a little bit. The editor is obviously a lot nicer than Arduino's, but
Yeah.
I didn't find any huge benefit to it.
Okay.
Well, I think they can run Python as well as C++. I think these, can't they? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, most of these things run Arduino just kind of out of convenience thing. It's kind of like how the PyPico will eventually support Arduino stuff, just because it's supporting legacy,
Yeah.
basically.
But when you do that, John, you don't get full access to things like the multi-core, etc. It's a fairly
Which is why I ask, because I think a lot of stuff that we run would benefit from that, rather than just straight porting the Arduino code.
So
Yeah, I was playing.
Sorry, go on.
I was playing around a little bit with they're called the free RTOS library, the real-time operating system that allows you to do multitasking. You can start up different tasks to run on different CPU, different cores, that's really handy for robotics.
Yeah, and that's kind of. I mean, I'm very familiar with the IDE and the Arduino language. I've not touched Python yet or any of the other languages, so I don't know how easy a transition it is or how hard a transition it is. But I think to get the most out of these things, we do need to probably explore that other shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, I on the code that I started writing for using one with Dio, I was separating all of the balancing functions onto one core. So anything that was taking the IMU feed would only process in that core, because there's a lot of heavy calculation going on, and it would distract from the input side.
And what language are you programming that in, Doug?
I was just using the regular IDE, the Arduino IDE.
Okay.
I found quite a few examples online, and was just basically trying to use quite a bit of cut and paste and learning the logic that's in there. It's all very new to me, so can't say that I'm getting it right. And certainly my Dio still isn't running, so it's not perfect. But
yeah,
I just haven't had a lot of time.
It's cool because it's quite, it's interesting to see how you do that transition. Really, is it how easy is it then to reference which core it's actually running on? How do you determine?
It's actually really easy. There's let me see if I can bring up the IDE and I can.
I got a little piece of code up. If you want me to see it, show it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, cool. If you got it up down, that'd be great.
Yeah, let me just.
Because I think the more we can understand on how we use different cores, then.
Yeah, let me know if you can see that.
Yeah, I can see that. It's very clear.
Yeah, so this is using the free RTOS library, and it's really simple. They're just declaring two tasks. Tell me if I'm going off, because I'm a programmer. I tend to speak programmer language.
No, we may well steal your brain in this session, so feel free.
And then the most of the work is done. Well, let me just skip over that piece and show you. Here's two tasks. Each of these is just blinking a different LED.
Yeah.
So it's just a continuous loop. Turn the LED off, turn it back on. And then all you got to do is this. You call this. You tell it run task 1. You can tell it. They call it pinning it. You can tell it which core to run on. And then this one starts up the second task and puts it on core 1. And that's all it is. I mean, these two functions
works.
Just start up those tasks, and they both run independently.
So is that in the main loop then? Now?
No, the main loop ends up being empty.
Okay.
And basically what you end up having is two loops, this one and this one, that are running at the same time.
Yeah.
And then if you go beyond 2, it's got, I guess, some sort of scheduler to be able to run them on the same core.
Right. So I just get my head around the multitasking piece. So what you can do is run 2 code concurrently dedicated to each core. And then if you want to run more than that, what they do is the cores will multitask.
Right. So if you only were running 2 tasks, they'd be running full time, each on its own core. And then if you want to start doing more than 2, one of the cores, at least one of the cores would have to multitask.
Yeah, true parallel first, and then adding multitasking as needed.
Yeah, as someone was saying with the Dio, that makes total sense to be running all your balancing stuff on one core, where that's just critical. You don't want to lose time on that, where flashing lights and stuff, you don't worry as much if something steps on something else.
So all the pinouts addressable in both loops? And like, how do you then write a custom queue to just manage? Like, if I wanted to throw, something more important, I want to do a high LED 1 from task 2.
There is a priority for a task.
There's a priority. Yeah, I see the priority, but I'm just wondering, like, would you write your own custom queue, like, to handle that? Or
there is functionality within the library for communicating to tasks and between tasks. I haven't dug into that too much yet, but there's predefined ways in the library for doing that sort of thing. It doesn't look overly complicated.
Cool.
So if you run to
smart LEDs.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I think if you scroll to the top too, if you scroll back up to the top, you have pin modes, LED 1 and 2 defined kind of in the general setup. So both the tasks are independent, right? So I think to go with what Amit was asking is that you could, from each loop, independently address everything that's declared in the void setup. The question that gets into it is whether or not what'll happen is if the two tasks try to request the same pin or function at the same time from two separate loops.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that. My assumption with like a digital output is whichever they would both hit the pin. And if one in a short time after the other would flip it back. So
it's really unlikely to be exactly at the same point, isn't it? So it would just push and pull. But I guess in coding,
you probably wouldn't want to do that.
Right, but it's first in,
You would
first
think
out.
there'd be
is what I'm
something
saying.
lower level to deal with that, right? I mean, wouldn't that be inherent in the microcontroller itself, right? You would think that it would, because the interrupts, regardless of cores, have to leave the cores and go to. Just like on a PC, right? You have to exit the CPU and go to the north or south bridge, depending on where you're going. So I'm assuming there's got to be a similar architecture.
Yeah, I mean, getting down into the weeds, I'm sure there's only one bus going out to those pins. So one core is going to get it before the other. But it just shows you probably shouldn't have a case where two different tasks are trying to hit the same pin. You're never going to be able to guess which one's going to get in first.
Right, but it'd be interesting though, because you can use assets, right? If you have something that's potentially like, I'm not familiar with 100% on DO, but when you're balancing, there might be a certain aspect that also might be used for the task. Core 0 is going to be doing the balancing, right? And then core 1 is going to be performing additional functions, but it could still read statuses from what's going on with core 0 based on the availability of the input, because the bus will say, well, we'll just keep passing the information. And in theory, no two, it's not going to simultaneously pass it twice.
Right. So in my case, the way I was doing it is I had some universal variables set that basically turned the core 0 was working on all of the balancing code, and it would just write to those variables. The core 1, which was doing input and all the actual output, that would read those variables to make changes to what was going on. So as one was setting what variables, the other was writing. So it kind of avoided the possibility of me having both cores setting something that it couldn't and run into kind of a conflict. I come from more of a SQL programming background, so having reads and writes kind of makes sense to me, but trying not to lock a table is deep in my core.
Yeah, and that's the challenge of any kind of multitasking programming is the tasks stepping on each other.
So I think that in that way, it kept it from writing the two. Where I kind of got stuck was I was having problems getting the PS3 controllers to actually stay connected, and I hadn't ever gotten time to go back and debug why I kept losing the controllers. But it sounds like it may be this Bluetooth issue of brownouts.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about that. So that could be the clue I needed to figure out my problem.
I think once we get into past kind of the growing pains of this, the one thing I was kind of excited about, and I do a lot of work around medical device Bluetooth LE stuff, like an awareness. So I think it would be pretty amazing for the Bluetooth LE capabilities for, say, when two droids of a specific type meet each other, you could actually queue off a specific task or interaction based on the Bluetooth LE stuff. So I think that's all relatively easy, right? I mean, you could buy a cheap Bluetooth LE beacon and stick it inside your droid now, but before we never really were, there was never an awareness. And the reason why I bring this up, which got me idea, because you have major and minor identifiers in Bluetooth LE, right? So say Michael created, say, here is the Battley droid's major designator, right? And you could even go so far as to assign minor designators to every person. So Amit's droid has this specific major and minor, but when Dan's droid interacts with Amit's, it knows it's Amit's. So that's kind of an interesting play that you could, like, I'm going way beyond because I was just thinking about how I track medical devices and stuff. So, but that's one of the things I was kind of excited about with Bluetooth Low Energy that a lot of people don't realize you could do by just modifying your majors and minors and then choosing what interaction you're going to have. Because if Amit's is an R2 and it's being greeted by a DO, they could have that staged interaction that they've had in the movies. So just kind of like, this is the mad scientist.
I can imagine a whole world where you build, just a communication protocol off of that, and like I could have my own, attitude of my droid and my own personality. And that's really brilliant. That's really cool.
Because I think if you've got an Imperial disguised chopper and another chopper walks by, he's normal. But then if an Imperial designated R2 walks by, choppers' actions change. And again, it's all very simple triggering with identifiers with Bluetooth Low Energy stuff. So that's a down the road thing, but that's kind of like, as I started diving into some of the Bluetooth LE stuff on this, I was like, oh, this could be really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, in like March or April, I would love to, maybe mock something up with you or like figure something out if you'd be up for it. I need a couple of months still to get my work done and also just the stuff I'm doing now. But
honestly, what I'm doing is I'm just looking at building an interaction platform for testing this stuff without having a full size, right? Basically, if you imagine our cutting board panels.
Yeah, correct.
And then we could just stage a nice type of interaction between devices. And, you wouldn't even need the motor controllers. Really, you just need a few simple things.
Oh, no, I just meant like more of like a command protocol and like just, how to like organize it. And like we would do it over over the internet, right? Because we're probably not going to get together. I don't know where you live, but, I could send you
whenever
commands.
Anyone comes to visit Galaxy's Edge, I live about 35 minutes away. So.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So Sean, I mean, could you mock something up to share with the group that showed that practically working? Very simply.
Well, the Bluetooth interaction stuff is actually pretty easy because the problem is what I haven't really figured out is how do you, and this gets down to doing everything on a single. That's the problem, right? Now, if there was a second if we put a second ESP32 in, and its sole purpose is to basically be that kind of Bluetooth LE awareness, then it could pass the serial command to the other one saying, droid identified, blah, 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 or whatever. And then you could change that interaction. Yeah, I mean, I could throw something together. I'm not a professional developer, so my code will probably make Dan cry a little bit, but I'm happy to donate.
No, that's cool though, because I think not being a developer makes it probably easier for all of us. I know Dan was very careful not to jump into full programming speak, but it's just balancing that. I mean, I'm thinking. I mean, Steve, who's on as well, has got he does escape rooms. And I can imagine that having devices that can recognize devices might be quite interesting in that kind of environment as well, Steve.
Yeah, because at the moment, that sort of functionality, I'm using RFID tags here and there. But Bluetooth would be certainly something of interest. That's for sure.
Yeah, the nice thing about the Bluetooth LE, the low energy stuff, is that it's ubiquitous standard, right? So if it supports it and you're identifying it, there are so many iterations and revisions of RFID cards that may not work. They don't work, not necessarily compatible with the frequencies and whatnot they use. So that's the part that is pretty exciting. And I think yeah, I think just a tiny little, just an ESP32, just its sole purpose is kind of the whole friendly thing. And again, like I said, Michael, having a group designated major identifier and then scoping out the minor identifiers, I think it could be pretty amazing. Because I think, of course, what would happen is, and I always forget, I'm bad with names, so I apologize. Is it Rick who set his droid on fire that everyone gives him shit?
It was
Right.
indeed Rick, yeah, the legendary Rick.
All right. So can you imagine if we're, in theory, we're all together and we all come up and the RFID or Rick's drone comes up and then all the manipulator arms just start waving back and forth to
Doing the Rick.
It'd be even better if our sound cards started playing sirens.
Obviously, the thing for me, with, as Michael was just saying about the differences between RFID and Bluetooth, obviously the proximity, the whole proximity thing is of a lot of interest to me as well, because if I can have something in a vicinity as opposed to proximity,
yes.
I know you can get vicinity RFID, but I think Bluetooth is going to have just so much more range, potentially, that you know, it means I can interact with stuff from outside of a room, for example. I don't know. I can't even think of possibilities that I could use it outside of Droid building stuff, but I'm incredibly excited about them, that's for sure.
So the work that I do, we give 3 states for Bluetooth LE awareness, right? So for beacon detection, it's far, which obviously means at the extremes of the range, near, and on top of, effectively. Those are kind of the 3 classifications we use, and they are, because it's a 2.4 gigahertz broadcast, right? So it basically is whatever your radio antenna is. It's that polar circle. So that's. Yeah, and that's exactly what we use them for, right? And people even go so far as to, in advanced scenarios for like hospital facilities, using beacon awareness to let you know when you're approaching a center versus having to have like GPS coordinates and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was neat because again, it's always neat when like the cool stuff from your hobby intersects like your work. So you're like, hey, I actually know something about this.
So here's my question: is if these things can have kind of that distance detection based on the signal strength, how far apart do you have to have multiples of them to start being able to triangulate position? So say I have a controller that has a beacon, how many devices could I put inside of an R2 to make it have an auto follow mode?
So the problem is that you're not going to get it as like you're seeing the beacon northwest of you. It's just that it's just that you're seeing it.
Okay.
So it's a little bit harder to do that. That you'd have to add an external factor that pre-associates that beacon with the location. So like, and then that device would have to be aware of, I'm seeing the beacon and based on positions to other beacons. So it's a hell of a lot more complicated to do that. It's just that's not really where Bluetooth LE wayfinding that wasn't put into that. That's where when we work with that, we lean more towards a Wi-Fi triangulation, which, is a whole different animal.
But I mean, to keep it kind of simple, what sort of distances are involved in those 3 areas? Where I'm thinking of it from a simple perspective, if you take the little micro, the little baby Astromex, it'd be very interesting within there, which within just an ESP32 and the basic controller for say BT1 to recognise when it comes across an R5, and one backs off, the other one turns aggressive. Just basic interaction between the 2 based on the distance, which I'm guessing that's a really simple setup that we could actually explore then to get our heads around it for then some of the bigger stuff.
Yeah, so you're going to look at approximately 30 feet, 15 feet, and then anyway, depending on the type of antenna and the antenna setup, we typically say 1.5 feet.
Okay. So the 1.5 feet, if you know, if one droid BT1 came into contact with R2 within 1.5 feet, then you know R2 could get alarmed and BT1 could get aggressive, for example.
Right, it could. The problem I'm looking at right now is the ESP32 does not seem to easily allow you to have those near designations.
Right. Okay.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm trying to just to draw it right near what I have. It's basically it's more of awareness versus actual proximity.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Got it. Got
But I
it.
think we might be able to do that based on something else. And when we start looking at response time in milliseconds between the two, I think. But that's again, that's just kind of where I'm going.
I have a question that might prong off of it or fork off of that, but does the metallic skins of a droid get compensated for? I mean, does it take into account like an X dB loss, just based on like your metal skins versus styrene?
In this, the way that I'm reading the ESP32 right now, no, because right now it's on or off.
Right. Got you.
It's I see you or I don't versus I see you this close.
Oh,
Okay, obviously.
I think we're probably getting into levels of detail that are beyond the scope of this conversation as well.
No, definitely. I saw there's. I think Ed mentioned that first time on Zoom is a little bit over his head, but I think it's interesting. And I mean, the bit out of this, I think, is shifting this discussion then in future sessions just to get simple, practical examples that we can play with. You know, I think there's the opportunities in the future are massive, but I think from this group, what'd be really handy is just having a simple bit of code and a couple of ESPs that people could just play with, so they could get their head around it, and then what we can build is complexity on that. So I mean that's kind of why I was asking Sean if you know if you'd be willing at some point just to share what you're working on, and you know with this is a code, this is a setup, and this is kind of what happens.
Yeah, I mean, like almost like the examples in the Arduino,
Yeah.
but we tailor them to ourselves. So it is like a specifically related to a droid rather than just blinking an LED sort of thing. I know that is, but it would be sort of like blink a series of LEDs for a specific droid. It is an example that then people can see and use practically in a.
I think that's why
a droid build.
Yeah, on the last session, looking at the blink application and then trying to work out how you link the controls up to the ESP, which is relatively simple. It's those kind of examples. Then it gives us all a chance just to play around with that a little bit. And I mean, where I'm kind of going with this is what I think we can do is get another. I'll just stick another shared folder up where we can put examples and little projects. So if there is, and I'm not talking about build projects, or there could be build projects, but effectively just little play projects where you can get two ESPs to recognize each other, or you can control an ESP through Blink, and then everybody learns as you kind of go through that. Would that work?
Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely would for me. I mean, I'm fairly new to the whole coding thing. Wiring stuff up, I've got no issues. I can take a schematic, I can wire up A to B, and I can follow that, and I can happily do that, and I can get it talking. What I'm struggling to get my head around at the moment is actually writing the code. Looking at examples of code, I can see what does what and how it affects stuff. I can disseminate that from the coding, but it's for me at the moment, it's getting my head around writing it, how to word it, and bits and pieces like that is what I'm struggling to get my head around at the moment. But so I can.
I'm exactly the opposite. So Thomas, if you'd like to teach me how to wire and solder, I will teach you how to code. Like, no question. I'm not kidding. Like I'm just like, I don't want to kill myself with a battery, but You know, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So-
Yeah, I mean that practical side of stuff, I've got no issues with. I've done some quite complex. I've made up some quite complex boards from kits and bits and pieces like that. And say looking at code like the Blink example where you've got a delay of 3,000 milliseconds and things like that, I can see, well, okay, he's causing it to flash every 3 seconds, blah blah blah. If I adjust that, I'm expecting to get this result, and I do. But for me to go and physically write that myself from a blank page, I'm like,
And that's why
no idea.
that's why, Thomas, a lot of us don't do that. We will literally pull other bits of code, massage them to make it do what we want to do by finding different, as you've said, examples and things. I'm by no means, I'm probably in a similar situation to you in that I'm very comfortable with a practical hands-on, not blowing myself up and sort of perspective. But coding was something new to me, a year, 18 months ago, and I've picked it up and still to this day, if I need to come up with a unique solution to something that doesn't exist at the moment, I'll just pull different bits of code from different people and then massage it.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to stop shy of calling it plagiarism, but it's not far off.
I've been programming for 20 years, and I rarely start from a blank page. You almost always start
That's
from
programming in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I've looked at other people's codes and I can kind of figure out what I want, but it's just then taking what parts I need and, like you say, massaging it into the bigger picture. It's that little bit that I'm not sure what parts I need to take.
Are we still talking about electronics and programming, or we are actually talking about Star Wars? Which one was that? It was like 7.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting.
Does anybody work with the smart LEDs, the programmable ones?
Oh, the
pixels.
Yeah, I think if you look at most code and you did translate it to books, I think what you'd see is a passage out of Harry Potter, and then you'd see another passage out of War and Peace, effectively, and people don't really change very much in there. I know when I've been things like the DO sound code, it's called Getting Started because that was what the original sketch was called on the Player Mini, and I've not even bothered changing the name of the file, let alone changing the code. I've just cut and pasted bits across. I think the better programmers get better at hiding all of that, really, rather than actually changing it.
Well, it's not so much hiding it as integrating it, right? Like you want to have your language. If you're speaking English, you want it to look like English all the way through, not French, German, English, French. But yeah, absolutely. I put a little picture up so you guys can get a little chuckle as well.
Oh, cool. I'll look at that.
I can also help out with anything because I can design the circuit from my brain as well as the programming from my brain.
So I was looking at the
One of the other interesting features I was looking at on the ESP32 is they have this protocol called ESP Now. It's a proprietary wireless protocol that allows ESP32s to talk to each other.
Yeah.
So it'd be very useful if you're going to run multiple ones within the same droid. It seems very easy to get them to pair up and stay paired up.
Yep, that's exactly. I'm looking at that exact feature to try and figure out how I'm going to control T3 because the head is a little bit more complex than an R2 head. It spins and then it tips in every axis. So your traditional pass-through wiring is a little bit more complex, but if you could have two ESP32s communicating with one another between the two, then you can set your dome, your head off on a table for display and have it completely functional on its own. And then when it's put onto the body, they can communicate together.
Yeah, I don't have a second one to try that feature yet, but it looks really promising.
Yeah.
Does that also let you upload the stuff? Sorry, Sean.
I'm sorry, Michael. Which protocol was that? What is that going to be using?
It's called ESP now. It's a, what did they say, 2.4 gigahertz wireless, but it's
Okay, so because I
totally
know for the BTL you use 40 2.4 gig channels, but 37 are actually communication and 3 are control. So I'm wondering, that's what, because the reason why I bring it up is density, right? And the only thing you want to worry about is when certain things are done in density, you know, like if you're at an event and there happens to be a truckload of droids that they may be, I just worry about co-channel interference or actually someone just jumping on it.
Yeah, the interference I'm not sure about. The communication protocol uses the MAC address, the ID, so it wouldn't be possible for the protocol to interfere, because another receiver might pick it up, but it wouldn't acknowledge the command.
No, then you just get into a radio time issue.
Yes, exactly.
Which is manageable, right? Because then it could just disregard. So, okay, cool. Thank you very much.
If there's also the Nrf radios, Nrf 24LO1s. They're just a simple wireless link, very inexpensive. If you're using other processors and such, give you a kind of a point-to-point to a point-to-multipoint communication network.
Yeah, because that's similar to I don't know if anybody here has an Apple TV, but we do that with the new AirPlay. We do a Bluetooth negotiation to create awareness, and then you're like, oh, you want to initiate an AirPlay, and then it does a point-to-point wireless, standard 2.4 or 5 gig connection. So that's something that's interesting too. And looking into it, I think the ESP32 kind of has that capability, which I think would go add on to what Doug was talking about.
The only potential issue that you'll run into with like ESP, when you're doubling up on those protocols, is your code can start to interfere. Like what you're trying to accomplish can start to interfere with the radio links. Yeah, that's the problem with all these integrated modules. Sometimes is that you have the stacks and everything are all running on board, but then you're trying to do something that's timing critical, control LEDs, control servos, control those sorts of things, and they can start to interfere with the timing of the RF link.
Yeah, I think for me, what I'm looking at for my solution is based on the physical space requirement of a Mega versus the ESP32. I would rather literally run 3 32s carved up and communicating over serial to do some cool stuff, and give me the flexibility, like you're saying, to keep my code from stepping on each other. I like to go
modularize it. That's a great way to go. I'm a big fan of modular, or just splitting off your processors so that each has a specific task. Hardware is cheap now, you can do that.
Exactly, it's cheap, it's powerful, and if I have, you've got one ESP that controls your body, one that controls your dome, et cetera, and one that controls something else, and they're all communicating via serial, you have the beauty of, oh shit, am I debugging 5 different sets of code running on one Mega, or am I just debugging one tiny little bit? And that to me is kind of where I see the win. And we see that with Matthew's like dome setup, right? Because it's all compartmentalized and he has the dome controls there and they're activated remotely, et cetera. But so I think that's kind of just where I'm headed. But like was brought up earlier, I think, I don't remember, was it John who said it or someone about how there are times where a lot of my code is just transplanted. And sometimes when I transplant, I find that when you're transplanting things, it's often easier to just, I strip out everything I don't need and then build up from there.
That's normally what I do.
For sure. Yeah, my only concern with the ESPs and those sorts of things is in the bigger droids, or in the sort of conference or con type scenario where you have a lot of RF, a lot of phones around, everybody's got Wi-Fi, everybody's got Bluetooth.
Yeah.
I'm not so sold on the reliability of those sorts of links.
Yeah, I think that's where you've got to use them for non-critical tasks. So, recognizing each of the droids and kicking off a animation that waves is fine. Or even on the smaller ones, it's okay for control, because, a DO that runs off is just going to get picked up by somebody and handed back. Whereas, a 400-pound R2 or whatever is going to create a little bit more disruption, shall we say, and blood. So.
What wireless standards do the ESP32s support? Is it 2.4 only, or is it 5.8 as well?
I believe it's 2.4.
Yeah,
So,
I think.
Sorry. So from a hardware radio, have you literally got? If you were running 2 cores, you could run one on Bluetooth and the other one on Wi-Fi. So you've got 2 hardware radio connection.
No. It's sharing antennas. So
sharing antennas, okay.
You'd only have one antenna, and it would have to multi between the 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a MIMO. I don't think it's a MIMO antenna anyways. So it's still, and then that goes back to the earlier discussion around radio timing, and that's just what kind of offloaded onto the chipset for. But the fact that it's networked and Bluetooth LE, unless it calls specifically out, but I don't see anything. It's all 2.4.
Yeah, and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi interfere with each other, so they need to be. You can't co-transmit. You have to time division them.
And that's where I think whether we, just where I'd like to go with these sessions is then just exploring a really simple solution for, again, micro droids or mini droids that we've got robust control that works, and then what we can do is potentially build something on top of that then starts to chat out or recognize other ones. But I mean, is that that running one element that does Bluetooth control and then actually using Bluetooth beaconing to recognize another droid, the 2 will interfere with each other?
Yeah, the other place I think these can be really useful on the bigger droids is for like your configuration and those sorts of links. Like if you have another system and you can use your Bluetooth or your Wi-Fi to configure it or do, again, your non-critical things, your blinky lights or whatever, which you don't care if you lose your link.
The other thing that came out in the group this week was obviously the Raspberry Pico, the new or the new microcontroller from Raspberry Pi. Anyway, has anybody played with that?
What's that? I didn't see it mentioned.
Oh.
That's impressive.
I
said
I'm being snarky.
I know you are.
I pissed off some people by commenting on the fact that we had
in there, John.
I saw it, but it doesn't have any basically wireless connectivity, so that's why I didn't think that for the purpose of small droids or baby droids would be interesting at this moment.
Yeah.
Sort of equivalent to it's equivalent to like a nano or a mega, or a teensy. It's just another
system. Price-wise, the designated price is like €4.
Yep.
And for the same price, one can have ESP32 from China, which have those capabilities we're right now exploring.
So we generally think the ESP32 is probably a better one to start to play around and build on.
Yeah.
For the moment being.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only advantage, it does include I2C. So you could do.
What about the new 32? There's a brand new 32.
What's the brand new one?
There's a newer version of the ESP32 out.
Oh, okay.
It's like the ESP32-2 or something. I have to Google it, but I'll look it up.
Yeah, I think
the ESP32S2.
Is that a new one?
One thing I find a little bit problematic with the ESP32 is that it's basically a board with pins, and you need to put it into something to be able to get all your connections out to somewhere. Well, you don't have to; you can solder it directly to the board, but and it looks like all the ESP32s are different. Some of you have found some kind of breakout board, but it's not really. It's only compatible with one ESP32 module.
So the breakout boards overall, the one I think we linked a 3 weeks ago, the labels, you could print new labels for the pinouts. So like literally, it was just a matter of, you know, taking some time and pinning and toning it all out with, you know, with a meter, continuity meter, and figuring out where each one goes. So that's, I mean,
Yeah,
as long as it physically fits, you should be okay.
the thing is, they don't necessarily fit, because I've measured two different types. One is 25.4 inches between pins, so 1 inch, and the other one is 2.54 millimeters narrower.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the one big thing, as long as they're physically compatible, right?
Yeah, but there's still the same number of pins, aren't there? Just two different widths. Yeah.
Well, you also get a 30 pin and a 38 pin.
There's what? Sorry, Stephen.
There's a 30 pin and a 38 pin.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are all kinds of different ones if you start looking around. So
yeah, they have different size print as well. There are rectangular ones, there are more square ones, like in the shape.
Yeah, the ones
I think that is one of the I think that is one of the strengths with the old Arduino stuff, that you have a few models that are standard. You have the Nano, you have the bigger Uno chips or Uno boards and etc. And they all look the same. You can buy one. You can buy one on eBay, and it's the right one.
Yep.
And this is very hard when they start looking at the ESP32, because they are so many different kinds and they are all different.
Yeah, I mean, getting a breakout board for these for our purposes is possible, Trevor. We can start to do some interesting things with that, but equally it's difficult to accommodate 38, 30 pins and the different widths between the two. I know you can get ones which you've got two effectively two holes at different widths. But okay, so we just a link there, which is the modules and board references. So I'm assuming the standards on this, then it's not just completely random by manufacturer. No.
One thing I just noticed, you know, Michael, I was saying before on mine, it didn't have the labels.
Yeah.
And it was like a narrower thing. I've actually just noticed, because it's been like stuck in a piece of foam, I've actually noticed if you turn it round, it actually has got the labels on the underside.
Okay.
That's very useful.
Okay. Now that
That's so convenient.
Now that I've seen that, Steve, the breakout board that I've literally just taken delivery of yesterday, that is suitable for the Node MCU32S, which is the one that you've got.
That's what this is, yeah.
And the one that me and Michael have got at the moment is the ESP32 development dev kit CV4.
Yeah.
So, but this breakout board has got the double headers on both sides, so it will take either of those.
That's really handy. Yeah.
That's a good one.
I will just find the link for that and I'll share it in the chat.
Hey, really stupid question. What is a breakout board's purpose? I'm sorry if this is too basic for everybody.
No, go for it. It's a breakout board is effectively, so what you end up with this, and what you've got to do is put cables on all of these, and then you have to apply separate power, and it's a pain in the ass if you want to connect it up to servos. So what a breakout board does, it lets you plug this in, but then it gives you data and power distribution on both sides for every pin, often with a power supply, a switch. So effectively, it's like a motherboard for the main processor. So when you plug that in, what it does is it makes it very easy to plug other devices in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So my like Uno R3 that I've got, like the Bluetooth that I've been playing around with and stuff, that's just effectively already got all that functionality in it.
They make breakout boards for that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the breakout boards because I prefer the screw terminal connections like Steve is showing right now.
Right.
I put ferrules on my connectors, and then I crimp a ferrule on, and then gives me nice, easy screw down terminal. It's great to quickly assess
You can
wiring.
take it like literally, and it breaks out all the different connections.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
And I think the other thing is when you start to, I mean, on the little board that we put together for the Bluetooth ones, you can put designated connections to plug in terminals. You can also have transistors to effectively give you power supply, 5 volt, standard 5 volt. You can run servos off. So instead of what you in a normal circuit, what you do is you end up with this. You end up with a big mass of wires, and then you'd end up with a 5 volt UBEC and a bunch of other things that did things to give you the voltage. Whereas the breakout board, it's simply you just plug it in, and effectively all you've got to really do then is plug servos in or other elements.
Got it.
Oh,
You know,
just-
Michael, I think it would be helpful if you and Steve or someone, if they could collectively identify kind of a standard-ish model, if we are going to convene and kind of hash out some cool stuff. It's like we just all agree on one model, because I think we've already identified 4 different ones today.
And I just ordered one.
Sean Wally has just put in the chat. Thank you, Sean. I had no idea that the S identifies a single core chip. I didn't realize that. I just assumed that an ESP32 was an ESP32. So thank you for that. I had no idea.
Hey
So
guys,
the dead board's got the dual core. Is that right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I have to run here, but I got a quick question. As far as the nanos, I have the Elegoo Nano, the Chinese knockoff. I'm having a problem connecting to that from my computer. Is there a specific version of Arduino IDE that works better?
Right. When you say you're having problems connecting, is it when you're trying to upload a sketch?
Correct.
Okay. The trick to that is when you go to select the uploader, that you'll find one that says old bootloader in brackets. You use that one.
I tried that and it's still not working.
What error is it giving you?
Do it. It's let me pull it up here real quick.
And you have definitely got it selected as a nano
It
type.
keeps it's saying invalid library found, no header
Oh,
files.
right. Yeah.
That's not the board. You're missing
But-
the library.
Yeah, that's
Well,
nothing.
I've been getting the same problem even with my Uno, which is uploading just fine. It keeps saying this. The files are there. There's something going with my computer that's saying it's not there, but it really is.
It's probably the location of the files. In that case, Arduino's quite finicky about where you place files. The other thing that is a bit of a gotcha sometimes in your code, if you tell it to include a library, if you've got that library already installed on your laptop or computer, then you can sort of just include it through that. But the other thing you can do is you can specify an actual folder where that library exists. So say, for example, you've got a customized version of a library, you can tell it to use the customized version on one line and the uncustomized version on another.
Okay, I just noticed another error here. It says AVR dude.
Yep.
Sir open, can't open device on the COM port. System cannot find the file specified.
You didn't.
You don't have Cura open or anything, do you?
Yeah, Cura will lock out your COM ports, just to let you know. That's a very good point.
Okay, I do. I think I do have Cura open up.
Bingo.
Okay, I'll try without that. I know previously I had a version of Arduino IDE that actually had as the opening splash screen, it said Arduino IDE on it, and that worked just fine. But somehow I accidentally updated the software, and then ever since then I can't find that version, and I have not been able to get it to upload.
One other trick that happens too is that if you double click the INO file to launch your Arduino in whatever the IDE is, whatever they call it, if you double click the INO file instead of actually start, if you're using a PC, start open the Arduino IDE, it will not know where to look for the library, and then therefore it's like gets confused. So just generally best practice, go to start and then launch your Arduino editor from there, and that might help you.
Sometimes it uses the path of the file being opened as the starting path for referencing everything else, and it just creates a mess.
Yep.
Okay, something to look forward to. All right, I got to run. Thank you very much.
All right, good luck.
Thanks, Jason.
I think of it when you do the file open, it will move it into, depending on how you have your.
So version 14 or whatever they just came out with right now, it seems like they fixed that bug, but
okay.
Since I didn't know what version he's on, and also, like I said, I just not to create any more confusion on top of like just getting stuff to work. I'm on 1.8.13. 16 right now, and that supposedly is fixed, but I haven't tested it.
Talking about getting things to work. For anybody who has not used ESP32, do not forget about having to push the button while you do the download.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. It's easy to
It is.
So I've got a little follow-up question to that, Dan. When I first got an ESP32, I just tried to, in the Arduino IDE, obviously, eventually got the two talking to each other. But I just tried to load Blink onto it and then make the onboard LED blink. And obviously, then had to do a bit of searching to find out what the pin for the onboard LED actually was. And weirdly enough, even though I got it, I thought I got it all right, the thing still wouldn't blink. So I kind of got a bit frustrated and forgot about it, did something else. I came back another day, plugged it all in again. And as soon as I plugged it in, gave it power, it started to blink. So does that mean you have to physically reset the board after you've uploaded a new sketch for that sketch to take effect?
Yes, I believe you do.
Yeah,
you got to press
So,
that same button.
if you upload a sketch, it won't start running straight away.
I think
Like
you have to restart it basically.
Yeah.
That, that really got me
Run the
upset.
code.
Yeah, I got caught with that, Steve, as well.
It's the same button too. If you press and hold the button to start loading, let it go, and then when it's done, you press it again and it'll reset.
So do we know what the other button does?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I thought the other button was the reset. There's a boot button and an EN button, isn't there?
Yeah,
Maybe it is.
Yeah, it's the boot button that you have to hold down to upload. But there's this EN button, which I guess is short for enable, but I've no idea what it
I
does.
wonder if could that be for the Bluetooth, putting it in program mode?
I'm not sure if it just.
It's a button for that.
Yeah, on the
I am really afraid it can stop the internet with all the connectivity it has.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be handy if that was actually a button that you could access, like the onboard LED. Wouldn't it be good if you had an onboard buttons that you could reference? So, for testing stuff, if you had to have an external button, you could actually use that as the onboard button. That'd be really cool.
Well, I mean, let's over-engineer this a bit. You can have a momentary circuit that you trigger off a GPIO that resets the power. So then it reloads the code.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you could do it off a GPIO, but I'm just wondering if that onboard EN button could be referenced.
It's a reset button.
Yeah, on the dev kit, it's RST, Steve. It says reset rather than EN.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to source the dev kit C. I think that's what we need to do. And this breakout board looks exceptional. Hopefully I can find it in the US.
Sorry,
and
I
not
was,
wait too long.
I was muted. The boot button is bootloader mode. The EN button is a reset, and the boot button is also tied to the GPIO 0. You can reference that as an input.
Okay, so you can use it as an input.
Yeah, just the boot button, not the reset button.
There you go, Steve. You can use it.
Okay. Interesting.
No, that's cool. Yeah, so I mean, well, I guess we've learned that the dev board looks like the one that we play with moving forward. Then.
But did you guys say that the S has only a single? Because I ordered it and I just canceled the order because the one that's in the link is a 32S. And is that only a single?
Yeah, I think Sean, the other Sean said that it's S is single core.
It says it on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just.
I
on
actually
Amazon.
copied the thing from the website, but when I'm looking at Amazon, it shows the ESP-32S and it states that it's dual core. So I'm not sure. There might be some variations depending on the manufacturer.
One you posted on it does say dual core.
It does, but then it has the S, so I canceled my order because I was like, I don't want to get the wrong thing.
Someone posted a link.
Anybody familiar with a guy with a Swiss accent? He does a bunch of videos on ESP32s. They're really good.
I think I might have stumbled across him.
All right, maybe I'll check that out first, and then.
Yeah, he's pretty good. He's got a lot of videos on the ESP32. That's where I learned about them initially when I started ordering them like 2 years ago.
Oh, brilliant! What's your experience, Ed?
Lamps and say again.
So I say, what's your experience on the differences between them, Ed?
I'm really bad at all this stuff. I'm listening in. You're already way above my tech level.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know whether you said you'd been ordered, whether you ordered them previously, whether you found whether there was much difference between the different versions.
Oh yes, I've got the one with the 38 pins that you were talking about, and the one with the less. And I get mine from AliExpress and wait 2 months over here in the U.S. for them to show up.
Yeah.
What brand is everybody using?
I just click with the highest amount of sales.
Yep.
And those usually work really well.
Yeah,
for me.
that brand
is the normal way to go.
I honestly don't know how many I have right now. I got a pack at some point of like 5 of them, but I don't even know what brand they were, just so I could have some to test the communication dome body down the road.
Yeah, I buy 20 at a time. I just bought 20 Wemos.
Yeah, mine's the dev kit version 2, dev kit C version 2, which I think is the standard with the 38 pin ones.
Yeah, I think, and that the breakout board link says use only MCU32S or the ESP32 dev kit C V4.
Yeah, I've got a V4. I got those off Amazon, the V4s in the UK.
All right, so if they're available on Amazon, I should be able to get it. But I need to find this breakout board stateside. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Is this going to be kind of? Are we going to say, Michael, loosely that this is the standard the dev ESP32 dev C board?
Yeah, I mean, I think so at the moment, as if we're happy with that. What I'd like to do, and we're kind of getting close to time now, but what I'd like to do is if we agree on that, because I think they're the ones that are dual core and they've got all the features, and then we'll have another session in a week or a couple of weeks, whatever, between us, and see what we've come up with from that. And if anybody's got any of the breakout boards for those, then pop it on the link, because I think if we can get one that's got a standard pinout and standard configuration, we can also look at them, whether we can, if there's boards out there. I think from my perspective, what I really want is something that you can plug in, but then that I get reasonable chunky power out of next to all of the pins, that gives you 5 volts for running servos and whatnot. Other than that, these boards have pretty much got everything else on board, and you can run servos and do all that kind of stuff. So if we can get to that stage with a couple of examples, it'd be great. And what I'll do also is I'll set a little shared area up for examples for both codes, wiring diagrams. So anybody who wants to kind of play around with these things and share them, then we'll do that as we go forward. So I don't think there's any
on
other
your
groups. Yeah, absolutely. On our GitHub, John. Yes, definitely. That'd be the way to do it, wouldn't it?
That would be.
But
yeah,
you're going to want to look into the power regulators on them then, because the ESP32s come with a bunch of different ones, and there's ones that are better than others. Again, the guy with the Swiss accent does a whole video about the power regulators on these boards.
Yeah, I suspect because we're running servos off the back of these, we'd want separate power specifically for the servos, etc. But I think if we work on these on the dev kit Cs, and we'll go for it from there.
Yeah, like you're saying, Michael. I think the key is establishing. We obviously know the board. Now we need to find the right breakout, and then everyone can kind of have the same exact thing with the minimal amount of code tweaking involved between sharing projects and stuff.
Realistically, with the specific requirements that like droids and stuff have, could make our own breakout board design.
A pin compatible BLE board with an ESP instead of the Nano, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we
fits the microdroid.
Let's
I mean, it's no more complicated, I think, Michael, than the light board you've done for Chopper. It's simple, right? I mean, overall, it's the components of it are simple.
Absolutely, it's Trevor that did that, and I know he's sitting there just ignoring the conversation now and not smiling. Oh, he's smiling. I've got it. We've got it.
But Amit, I gotta drop.
Yeah.
But Amit, I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. And Amit, I had an idea specific around Bluetooth LE with app development, and even if we don't go we don't go anything too crazy from the interaction part, I think it would be really awesome to have an app we could all run on our devices and go up to somebody's droid, have it acknowledged, and it could give a bio on the droid and the builder, et cetera, that kind of detail.
So
that's just
I'm going to go ahead and that already exists.
Okay.
The Droid Builder web team, there is a Rob Howdle's group. I probably just butchered his last name. I'm not sure why. Droid Holocron. So got all that.
Yeah.
And you can go up and everyone has their own QR codes. You know, bring up the droid, bring up the builder.
So that's not the Droid Builders group.
Is that not? Oh, was that? No, that was
okay.
That was Steel, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was Steel.
There's two groups.
No idea who they are.
Too many groups.
Well, let's play with that anyway. If that works, I think once we can bottom out getting the standard and getting the functionality, and we can look at potentially whether there's boards out there that support it, or even designing a board ourselves.
Beautiful.
Cool. Right, guys, we're gonna record. I've recorded this, so again we can share this with the group. And what I'll do is I'll set another session up in a week or so's time if everybody fancies jumping on it again, and we'll continue the conversation. Massive thank you. It's been brilliant. I mean, I've learned loads tonight just listening to you guys, and it's also kind of inspired me to carry on playing with these damn things and get up and running and working. So it's superb.
Yeah,
thank you.
I think I'm going to mute for at least the first half of it because I get too mad scientisty.
It'll be quite a conversation if you do that, Sean. We're more than happy to listen to people who know and who have played with these things. We learn a lot, so that's cool. Right, guys, have a lovely Sunday or whatever's left of it, and I'll no doubt see you on the group, but I'll also speak to you all soon. So thank you so much again.
Cheers. Yeah, thank you. I learned a lot. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.